never thought I'd be the kind of person to stumble into the kind of shit you only hear about in conspiracy theory, YouTube videos, or late-night Reddit threads. You know, the ones where people claim to have seen the worst of humanity on the dark web, only for everyone in the comments to call bullshit. But I swear to God, I'm telling the truth. And if you think I'm lying, I really, really wish I was. This all started because of Chris. Chris was my best friend since high school. The guy was one of those people who made life feel like a movie, always pushing things too far, chasing cheap thrills, but somehow making it look fun. He was the kind of guy who'd dare you to shoplift at 7-Eleven, pick a fight with some random drunk dude at a bar, or sneak into abandoned buildings just to feel that rush of adrenaline. 2 years ago, he disappeared, just fucking gone. No calls, no texts, nothing. The last time I saw him, we were at a shitty strip club off the highway outside of Chicago, celebrating his birthday. He was wasted, laughing his ass off, and telling me about this crazy shit he'd been getting into on the internet. He said he had found a way to access real, dark websites, not the fake hacker forums or drug markets that got taken down by the feds every few months. No, he said he found the real shit, the stuff that people don't talk about because they either end up missing or dead. I rolled my eyes, took a sip of my beer, and told him he was full of shit. He just laughed, leaned in, and said, "If I go missing, don't look for me." I laughed it off at the time. I shouldn't have. A week later, his phone went straight to voicemail. His apartment was empty. His family filed a missing persons report, but nothing ever came of it. Cops didn't care. They treated him like just another loser who skipped town, probably on drugs, probably dead in a ditch somewhere. But I never believed that. I had this gut feeling that something else happened to him. 2 years passed. I moved on, or at least I tried to. Until last week, I was on a Discord server with some guys I met through a deep web forum. They were into weird shit, data dumps, abandoned websites, old lost media. I never really fucked around too much, mostly lurked. But I was curious. Someone posted a link in one of the private channels, a site I'd never seen before. It was an auction, a video auction. Most of the stuff was typical dark web bullshit. Illegally obtained security footage, home invasion clips, creepy voyeuristic shit from people's webcams, the kind of thing that makes you want to throw your laptop into a river. But then I saw him. It was a grainy, low-quality thumbnail of a man in a dark room. He was sitting on a concrete floor, hunched over. His head was down, hair greasy and matted. His arms were wrapped around his knees, and he was so fucking skinny that I could see the outline of his ribs. His wrists and ankles had something dark wrapped around them, zip ties maybe, or duct tape. The title of the video was Lot Number 184, Live Feed, Male, Mid-20s, High Pain Tolerance. I felt my stomach twist into a fucking knot. My hands were shaking as I clicked the link. The page took forever to load, but when it did, the video started playing immediately. The camera was in the corner of the room, aimed down at him. The room was small, like a basement or a storage unit. Bare concrete walls. A single metal door behind him. There was no sound except for this weird, low, humming noise. Probably from whatever shitty camera they were using. I stared at the screen, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The man moved. His head lifted slightly, just enough for me to see part of his face. It was Chris. His cheek was swollen, bruised purple and yellow. His left eye was almost shut, and his lip was split open, dried blood caking the corner of his mouth. His skin looked sickly, pale, almost grey. I felt like I was going to throw up. There was a chat box next to the video. People were typing in bids. $500, $750, $1,200, $3,000? My hands hovered over my keyboard. I had no idea what the fuck I was supposed to do. I had no money, and even if I did, what the fuck was I bidding on? The site didn't explain anything. It was just numbers going up. Some people were making comments. Looks weak, not worth it. Is he trained? Break his fingers on stream first? I felt something snap inside of me. I don't even remember closing my laptop. I just remember breathing too hard, too fast, like I was about to fucking die right there at my desk. This wasn't a recording. This was live. Chris was alive, and someone was about to buy him. I don't remember how long I just sat there, staring at my screen, trying to convince myself I hadn't just seen what I saw. But it was real. The chat, the video, the fucking bids. Chris. I couldn't just sit there and let someone buy him. I clicked back onto the page. The auction timer was running out, less than a minute left. The bids were still going up. $6,500, $7,800, $10,000. What the fuck were they even paying for? What happened after they won? I needed to think. I needed to do something. I tried typing into the chat, but it was locked. Only approved accounts could bid. I clicked around, trying to figure out how to register, but every link just led me to an error page. Fuck! I slammed my fist onto my desk, hard enough to knock over the empty Monster can sitting next to my keyboard. My mind was racing. I didn't have the money even if I could bid. There had to be another way. Then I remembered something. The site had a list of previous auctions. Maybe I could find out who was running this shit, who was buying people. I scrolled through the list, my stomach turning at some of the thumbnails. I didn't want to click on them, but my hands moved on their own. Lot number 177, sold, male, mid-30s, excellent vocal reactions. Lot number 162, sold, female, early 20s, unmarked, good condition. Lot number 149, sold, male, teen, athletic build, no disabilities. My hands were sweating. These weren't just videos, these were people. The usernames of the buyers were partially blurred, just asterisks replacing most of the letters. But one stuck out. It wasn't completely censored. MCon17, I copied it, pasted it into Google. Nothing. I tried Reddit, Twitter, even some shady-ass hacking forums I knew about. Still nothing. Then I tried searching on Discord, and there it was, a private server, invite only. The description was just a single emoji, bleeding heart I didn't think. I just clicked join. The server was almost empty, just 5 channels, rules, general, transactions, requests, live streams. Nobody was talking. The last message in general was from 3 days ago, just a simple shipment confirmed, location sent. But in transactions, there was a post from 15 minutes ago, from MCon17. One lot number 184, awaiting delivery. Chris. My whole body went cold. I clicked on his profile, hoping to find something, anything, that would tell me where the fuck he was. The account was almost empty, no profile picture, no bio, no past messages. But there was one thing, a linked Telegram handle. I hesitated. This was stupid. This was so fucking stupid. Then I clicked it. It opened Telegram and took me straight to a private chat. No messages, just the username MKON-17 at the top of the screen. I had no idea what I was doing, no plan, nothing. I started typing. Where's lot number 184? Being delivered. I stared at the message for a second before hitting send. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear my own breathing. For almost a full minute, nothing happened. I felt like I was going to puke. Then 3 dots appeared. Typing. Who is this? Shit. Think. New buyer. Interested in similar stock. Need details on this shipment before I commit. The dots popped up again. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold my phone. Not how this works. Who invited you? I had seconds before this guy realized I wasn't supposed to be here. Same person who invited you. The dot stopped. Then, funny. You have 2 minutes to tell me who you are before I end this conversation. Fuck. I was about to blow my only chance. If I couldn't get something out of this guy, I'd never find Chris. I thought about it, then typed, I'm willing to pay more. The dots appeared instantly. How much? My throat went dry. $50,000. I didn't have 50,000 fucking dollars. But I needed to keep him talking. There was a long pause. Then, lie. But I'll humor you. Chicago, 2 a.m. I'll send coordinates later. My stomach flipped. Chicago, that was home. Chris had never left. Pick up or drop off, I typed. Pick up, warehouse, bring cash. Then he sent a string of numbers, GPS coordinates. And then he blocked me. I had no fucking idea what I was doing. I sat there staring at the Telegram chat, my heart hammering in my chest so hard it hurt. I had the coordinates. I had the time. 2 a.m., that was less than 4 hours away. I should have called the cops. Should have sent the info to the FBI or whatever the fuck you're supposed to do in situations like this. But I knew better. Chris had been missing for 2 years. The police had never given a shit. Even if they did believe me, what were they gonna do? Show up with sirens blaring, scare these sick fucks off, and make Chris disappear for good? This was on me. I grabbed my car keys, my hoodie, and the 9mm Glock I kept in my nightstand. I hadn't fired it in months, but right now, it was the only thing making me feel like I had a fighting chance. I checked the GPS coordinates. The warehouse was on the south side, near the old freight yards, one of those places where you could dump a body and no one would find it for weeks. Perfect. I pulled up a block away at 1:45 a.m., parking under a busted streetlight. The place was exactly what I expected, an abandoned industrial lot, rusted chain-link fence barely standing, graffiti-covered walls, the whole serial killer starter pack. A single light flickered above a roll-up garage door. I could see a black SUV parked near it. I killed my engine and just sat there for a second, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My hands were sweating. My brain was screaming at me to turn around, go home, and pretend I never saw that video, but I couldn't. Chris was in there. I took a deep breath, grabbed my phone, and typed a quick text to a burner email I made in high school. If I go missing, check Southside warehouses, GPS attached. At least if I got fucking murdered tonight, maybe someone would find my body. I tucked the gun into my waistband, pulled my hoodie over it, and got out of the car. As I got closer, I could hear voices, 2 guys talking low. The SUV was still running, exhaust puffing into the cold air. I stuck to the shadows, creeping along the fence. Then the garage door groaned open. I pressed myself against the wall. A man stepped out, tall, built, wearing a black jacket with a red logo on the sleeve. He lit a cigarette, exhaled slow. A second guy followed behind him, bald, wearing gloves, carrying a fucking baseball bat. This was bad, really fucking bad. Buyer's late! Or he's full of shit. They were talking about me. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my breathing steady. I needed to see inside, needed to know if Chris was even here. I took a step closer, peering through the gap in the garage door. And there he was. Chris was slumped against a metal chair, arms zip-tied behind his back. His head lolled forward, chin against his chest. His shirt was ripped open, his skin covered in bruises and dried blood. I swallowed hard. He wasn't moving. A third man stood next to him, checking his phone. He was older, maybe late 40s, wearing a suit that looked way too expensive for a place like this. He glanced at the 2 guys outside. Give him 5 more minutes. If he doesn't show, we sell the parts. My stomach fucking dropped. Parts? Chris groaned, barely lifting his head. His eyes were swollen, face barely recognizable under all the bruising. He was still alive, but not for long. I had 5 minutes to figure out what the fuck I was gonna do. I was out of time. Chris was in there, barely conscious, and these sick fucks were talking about selling his parts. I didn't know if that meant organs, limbs, or something even worse, and I didn't want to find out. I had my gun. But I wasn't some action movie hero. I'd never shot at a person before, and there were at least 3 of them, maybe more inside. If I fucked up, if I hesitated even once, they'd kill both of us. But I had one advantage. They didn't know I was here. I crept back along the fence, trying to steady my breathing. The 2 guys outside were still near the SUV, bitching about the buyer being late. I needed a distraction, something to get them inside so I could take them by surprise. Then I saw it, an old rusted pipe lying near the fence. I picked it up, took a deep breath, and hurled it at the SUV's windshield. Crack! The glass exploded. The reaction was instant. What the fuck? Shit, check it out! The 2 guys spun around, guns drawn, scanning the darkness. I ducked low, pressing myself against the side of the warehouse. The guy in the suit poked his head out from the garage. What happened? Some asshole just... I didn't let him finish. I stepped out, gun raised, and shot him twice in the chest. His body jerked like a puppet with cut strings. He staggered, gasped, then collapsed onto the pavement. The other 2 turned, eyes wide. I fired again. Bald guy took one in the leg, dropped hard. The second guy ducked behind the SUV, pulling his own gun. I barely dodged as a bullet whizzed past my head, hitting the warehouse wall behind me. I sprinted toward the garage, heart slamming against my ribs. Bald guy was screaming, clutching his leg, trying to grab his bat. I didn't give him the chance. One more shot, straight to the skull. His body twitched, then went still. The last guy was still behind the SUV, reloading. I didn't wait. I ran inside the warehouse. Chris was barely holding on. His eyes flickered open as I rushed over, his face a mess of dried blood and bruises. "Oh, Andy?" His voice was barely a whisper. I pulled my knife from my pocket and started sawing through the zip ties. "Yeah, man, I got you. Stay awake, okay?" His hands were ice cold. His whole body was shaking. He was way too fucking thin, like he hadn't had a real meal in months. I got his arms free and moved to his ankles when I heard footsteps. The last guy was coming. Chris tried to move, but he was too weak. "Stay down," I told him. I pressed against the wall, gun up, waiting. My hands were slick with sweat, my heart pounding so fucking loud I thought it'd give me away. The footsteps got closer, then the guy rushed in. I fired. Click. Fuck! I was out. The guy grinned, lunged at me, and swung his gun like a hammer. The barrel smashed into my temple, and my whole world exploded in pain. I hit the ground hard, vision swimming. He stomped on my wrist, pinning my hand down. "Stupid motherfucker," he growled. He pressed his knee into my chest, gun aimed at my forehead. I reached for my knife, too slow. "Should have minded your own fucking business." His finger tightened on the trigger. Then, out of fucking nowhere, Chris moved. It wasn't much, just a weak, stumbling lunge, but it was enough to knock the guy off balance. I didn't hesitate. I drove my knife straight into his throat. He made a horrible gurgling sound, eyes wide in shock. Blood sprayed across my face, hot and metallic, as he collapsed onto his side, twitching. I didn't stop. I stabbed him again and again and again. I don't know how many times. I just kept going until he stopped fucking moving. Then silence. Just my breathing. Chris's ragged gasps. The smell of blood, oil and sweat thick in the air. I dropped the knife, wiped my face with a shaky hand and turned to Chris. "Can you walk?" His head barely moved. Don't know." We had to get out of here. I pulled him up, slinging one of his arms over my shoulder. His whole body was shaking. He smelled like sweat, piss and blood. I didn't care. I dragged him toward the exit. Chris was barely holding on. His body was so fucking light, like he'd been starved down to nothing. Every step felt like dragging a half-dead corpse, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. If more of them showed up, we were fucked. The SUV was still running. The guy I stabbed was dead. Bald guy was dead. Suit guy was dead. The driver had to be the last one. I heard movement outside. He was still there. I peeked out. He was crouched by the SUV, gun up, scanning the lot. I had no idea if he saw me run inside, but I wasn't going to wait to find out. My gun was empty. The knife was slick with blood, barely in my grip. Chris was dead weight on my shoulder. I had one shot at this. I pulled Chris behind a stack of crates, setting him down gently. "Stay here. Stay quiet." His hand weakly grabbed my sleeve. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. "Andy, don't..." I squeezed his arm. "I got this." I didn't know if that was a lie. I crouched low, creeping along the wall. My heart was a fucking jackhammer in my chest. Every breath felt too loud. My brain was screaming at me to run, but I ignored it. I was past fear now. This was something else. I saw his shadow move. Closer. He was checking the bodies. His back was turned. I gripped the knife tight, and then I ran. I don't even remember screaming. I don't remember thinking. Just the feeling of my knife slamming into his neck as hard as I fucking could. He made this awful choking noise, gun clattering to the ground. I twisted the blade, ripped it out, and shoved him down. He hit the pavement, blood pouring from his throat. He twitched. Then nothing. I was panting, shaking. My hands were drenched in blood, my clothes soaked in sweat. I felt like I was outside of my own body, watching this all happen to someone else. But I didn't have time to process. I ran back inside, grabbed Chris, and dragged him toward the SUV. We had to leave. Now the drive was a fucking blur. I barely remember shoving Chris into the back seat, peeling out of the lot, speeding through empty streets at 3 a.m. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely keep the wheel straight. Chris kept fading in and out. "Stay with me, man." I reached back, shaking his arm. His lips barely moved. "It hurts." "I know, just hang on." I was driving blind. No plan, no destination. I couldn't take him to a hospital, they'd asked too many questions. But he needed help. Bad. I made a decision. I took him to my place. I barely got him inside. He collapsed onto my couch the second I let go, his body limp, too weak to move. I grabbed the first aid kit from my bathroom and started cleaning his wounds. His ribs were fucked, bruises covering his whole torso, and he had deep cuts on his wrists and ankles from the zip ties. "What did they do to you?" I asked, voice shaking. Chris just stared at the ceiling. His breathing was slow, hollow, like he wasn't even there anymore. "It kept me in a room." His voice was hoarse, like he hadn't spoken in months. I waited, let him talk. "Took us different places, cameras, bidding." My stomach turned. I already knew. I saw it, but hearing him say it made it feel so much worse. Chris swallowed hard. His hands were shaking. "Others? They took them. I don't know where." I clenched my fists. There were more. I already knew the answer, but I asked anyway. "How long were you there?" Chris just closed his eyes. A single tear ran down his cheek. "I don't know." I didn't ask anything else. He was safe. That was all that mattered right now. A week passed. Chris barely spoke. He barely moved. He stayed on my couch, staring at nothing, jumping at every little noise. He only ate when I forced him to. He only slept when he was too exhausted to fight it anymore. I thought about calling his family. But how the fuck was I supposed to explain this? "Hey, remember your son who vanished 2 years ago?" "Yeah, I found him in a fucking human auction." Number Chris needed time. But I couldn't stop thinking about the others. That site wasn't just a one-time thing. It was a business, and I fucking knew that more people were being sold right now while I sat here doing nothing. I still had the Discord link, the auction page. I still had the name MKON-17, and I still had my gun. I had a choice. Forget this ever happened, or go back into the darkness. and burn that whole fucking operation to the ground.